They were literally hardworking men who worked in a mine, and they were rich. They were digging diamonds and rubies out of mines, right? So it was confusing because not only did the dwarfs have just a normal role, right? And they represented a positive source of masculinity in the movie, but they protected Snow White. They fought for her. They gave her a place to stay. Like, there was nothing that was bad about the dwarves in the movie. So I was just confused. It's when wokeness goes so far that it just ends up killing your own film.
Hey family, welcome back to our channel. As you can see from the title, today we are going to be talking about the recently released trailer for Snow White. And yeah, this gotten quite a strong negative reaction actually from the audience and from people who've seen it. And we're going to just hopefully break down a couple of the reasons why we feel that this may be happening and what people are saying. So Mrs. B, what's the first couple of things that people have noticed about this trailer that they don't like?
So I would say the first thing that is clearly an issue and has been an issue from the original press tour with Rachel Zegler talking and being picked in the first place is that Snow White is not white. So I've had a problem with just race hopping in general, because I feel like if you want to include people, you need to just do original stories. This is what we covered in our Little Mermaid video. Check that out if you want to. But when you race swap someone, especially when you race swap someone called Snow White, when the lore of Snow White is lips red as the rose, hair as ebony, skin white as snow, and then you have a Latina actress, it's kind of insulting. And I don't think it's racist in any way to say that that's an issue, because I feel like we would have the same issue if you put a white woman in Mulan's place, or you put a black woman in Moana's place, or you put an Indian woman in, I can't even think, but you get the point we're trying to make. Like, when it comes down to it, it's just strange that they keep race swapping, and I don't know why this is an issue. I think the second thing is that she's just not that attractive as Snow White, if I'm being completely honest with you. And this is not me trying to say that Rachel Zegler is an ugly person. I'm not trying to say that. I think the issue is, though, when you look at Gal Gadot and she is the evil queen, obviously the queen was supposed to be somewhat beautiful, but to find somebody more good looking than Gal Gadot was always going to be a struggle anyway. It's obvious that they're probably trying to make it seem like this is something of beauty comes from within, and even though Gal Gadot is really beautiful, she's an evil person. Okay, but you kind of set her up for failure.
Physical attraction is definitely a subjective thing. Every person's experience of physical attraction to another person is their own. However, and this is something that maybe seems controversial, but I think there are certain standards of beauty that are universal. Okay? And Gal Gadot is very beautiful. Rachel Zegler, I'm not saying she's unattractive, but she's not touching Gal Gadot. Let's be honest, she's not touching her. So to put her as the main character who's supposed to be more beautiful than the witch who is being played by Gal Gadot is a bit of a bold move, and is kind of an understatement to who that character is supposed to be and what they're supposed to represent and what they're supposed to look like. But then worse than that is when people see an actor play a character that they've read about, that they know, they really want that actor to embody, in both on screen and off screen, that character. And this, I'm sorry, but she's not done it. She's not doing it, and people are getting upset about it.
You mean Rachel Zegler?
Rachel Zegler, yes. Thank you.
I would just like to comment on what you just said about attractiveness.
Go on then.
I actually think that beauty is something that's actually quite simple. I feel like we get emotional for some reason these days about things that are clear and plain in our face. So I'll give you an example. When we think about Marilyn Monroe, it's very, very obvious that she was stunningly beautiful. She is literally one of the biggest beauty icons of all time. When we think about someone more so in modern day, like Halle Berry, it's obvious that she's beautiful. Like, it's in your face. There's nothing you can say about it. To me, Gal Gadot is up there with the two of them. Now, you can debate whether or not she's as good looking as the two of them, but there's a reason they picked her to play Wonder Woman, right? And I think the point of Snow White was that she was supposed to be beautiful outside and in. It was not just that she was, you know, fairer in terms of her personality. When the queen was saying to the magic mirror, mirror, mirror on the wall, who was the fairest of them all, the reason she wanted to kill her was because on that day, the mirror said, someone today is fairer than you. And it is Snow White. And so when you see Snow White and she is not even slightly fairer than the queen, and I don't mean fairer as in skin tone, I mean fairer as in better looking, it's very, very just annoying when you know the original story. And it's funny because if you were going to do a situation where it was personality versus, you know, inner beauty, outer beauty, whatever, there are so many ways that you could have done that in a different way. Like, for example, when they had Snow White and the Huntsman, obviously Kristen Stewart was not as good looking as Charlize Theron. However, because Kristen Stewart has kind of a demure personality, she just embodies the character better. And so it was, and again, people might want to argue whether or not this is a good thing or whether the movie was good or not. But it was very, very obvious that they did that movie much better in terms of the rollout, the press tour. Kristen Stewart was not slagging off the movie before it ever came out. And I think that's just what kind of killed it, to be honest. And then when you look at the fact that, you know, somebody like Lily Collins, who also played Snow White, was perfect for the Snow White character, and you had the Queen, Julia Roberts, who was just as beautiful, but an older woman. I don't want to say an older version, because no, but she was an older woman, and Lily Collins was a younger woman, but they were both beautiful. But Lily Collins, to me, really embodied Snow White. She was beautiful, right, inside and out. And so it was bad enough that you did the race swap, but then when you add the fact that this person's not a nice person, this does not embody Snow White. It just doesn't.
And just leading on from what Mrs. B was saying as well, like Rachel Zegler, some of the points that she's been coming up with is, you know, she didn't like the original Snow White film. She felt that the prince was a little bit weird and all of this stuff. And she was kind of moving it more into what seemed like a more feminism-based argument in terms of, you know, Snow White didn't need the prince and the prince is kind of useless. So in the trailer, you see the prince for maybe a few seconds at most. He's not in there a lot at all. And then in terms of just the overall, you know, masculine presence in the film, like, okay, then you get the dwarves, right? The dwarves, the other thing that people don't like is how weird the dwarves look. Like, their dwarves literally look like the characters from the BFG, the giants from the BFG. That's what the dwarves are looking like out here. And, you know, whilst they're trying to stay a little bit more true to the cartoon, it looks like you made a cartoon kind of more realistic. It doesn't really look like real life, if that makes sense. And you can tell they've used a lot of CGI in this film. There's a lot of CGI everywhere, even down to like the animals and all the everything. There's a lot of CGI,
and it doesn't look good.
It looks kind of cheesy. It looks cheap, to be honest with you. It's kind of reminiscent of, what was it,
The Lion King.
Huh?
The Lion King.
The Lion King. I was actually thinking of Superman, the Man of Steel. Do you know? Right. Do you know Man of Steel? And then he had a beard, and then but they tried to CGI
it wasn't
out.
Man of Steel. You're thinking of Justice League,
where
his mouth is moving.
Okay,
and
Justice League. Yeah,
it's not really happening.
Thinking of Justice League, and they tried to CGI his mouth out. some of it, like, okay, I don't know if it's that bad because that's them trying to fix something, but this is like you tried to do too much with the CGI, like, and maybe they did that because, like, specifically, like, if you think about the dwarves, maybe they were trying not to use people who actually have dwarfism in real life. Maybe they were trying not to offend them. I don't know what they were trying to do with it, but it just kind of seems a bit weird. I don't know about you, Mrs. B, but I don't have super high hopes for the film. We will watch it and see how it goes. Maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised. Who knows? Maybe everything that Rachel Zegler was saying was right, and then they portrayed it well in the film, and then we'll all be happy. But somehow I doubt it. If I'm being honest.
Just to answer what you were saying about the dwarves, apparently Peter Dinklage actually came out and essentially just cussed the movie. And I don't know if he was cussing the movie as in he was just saying, why are we remaking Snow White at all, or whether he was cussing the fact that, you know, people, like, why are we still portraying dwarves in a certain way. I don't know, but basically he came out, said that basically they shouldn't be having dwarves portraying this kind of thing, and then somehow after that, I guess they decided not to have real people, so they decided to CGI all the dwarves. So what's confusing about that?
So I'm guessing then maybe he was trying to say that, oh, dwarves shouldn't be portrayed as magical characters or something.
Listen, I don't know what. Okay, so what I will just say this: what confuses me about this whole situation is that the dwarves were actually portrayed really well, in my opinion, right? In the original, because in the original, the dwarves weren't. They weren't even magic. They were just people, right? And not only, okay, they had a bit of a messy house, right? But they were literally hardworking men who worked in a mine, and they were rich. They were digging diamonds and rubies out of mines, right? So it was confusing because not only did the dwarfs have just a normal role, right? And they represented a positive like source of masculinity in the movie, but they protected Snow White. They fought for her. They gave her a place to stay. Like, there was nothing that was bad about the dwarves in the movie. So I was just confused. And in Mirror Mirror, they just used normal dwarf actors, and then in Snow White and the Huntsman, I think they basically used normal actors that they made look smaller. So you had two options that you could have done, and for whatever reason you just decided to go with the CGI. It's confusing. It's when wokeness goes so far that it just ends up killing your own film. It's a confusion.
But I think it's more than just wokeness, though. I think it's also trying not to offend people and then still ending up offending people by trying not to. Because I think they're trying to make everyone feel okay with, you know, how they're portraying the film. But in doing so, it's like you've got fans of the film, of not just the film, but of the story. And then you've got just normal people, and then people who are very on the left side of, you know, liberalism and everything like that. And it's very difficult you can't please everyone. That's the point. Like, you literally just can't please everyone. And so, yeah, we're here saying what we're saying. And as artists, we understand that you can never please everyone. But there are some things you can do to make sure that you actually get the bulk of your audience to be on side with whatever it is that you're putting out. And Mrs. B, just before we go, like, what would you say is the right way? Because I know we're here and we're offering our critique and opinion on this situation, but what would you say is the right way to repurpose an old story or remake an old piece of artwork or film? How would you say that is there a right way to do it?
Well, okay, so art is subjective, yes. However, I do think that if you're going to do something that is beloved, if you're going to do something that people really, you know, have a good understanding of, in terms of it's something that they grew up with in their childhood, it means a lot to them, you kind of need to stick with the like meat and potatoes of the story. Basically, you need to really stick with the lore. And I think in 2015 they did this well with Cinderella, and essentially what they did well was that they stuck with the main parts of the story, but then they adapted things around it that Cinderella never had in it. So in the 2015 version, they go into detail about her mother, and they never do that in the original Cinderella. Yeah. So they basically say that her mother died and then her father ends up dying, but you don't actually see the relationship that they have. So the fact that they added those relationships, it added so much depth to the character of Cinderella and why she was so kind and why she ended up being this beautiful person, because she had an amazing relationship with her parents. That was an excellent way to change things and add real life scenarios without changing the main part of the story. Then you get to find out about the prince. You get to find out about the prince's father and why he's a good person. And basically what they did was they added character depth. They added real depth to the people. I think
that's a good way to do it, because like I liked your original statement. Keep the meat and potatoes of the story, and that way you won't be going too far astray from what's happening. And then, like you say, pointing out with the Cinderella, adding depth to each character. That's what people love, because really when you see a good story, you want to know more. Like, I think that's why it was so clever with when it came to Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit series. You start with the main story of the Lord of the Rings, because that's the main story, right? And then you love it so much, you're like, oh, I want to know more. It's a whole world. You're invested in the world of Lord of the Rings in Middle Earth. So then the Hobbit series comes out and it blows everything out of the map, because it's going deeper into that thing that you already loved. And yeah, along the way, they probably offended a couple of people who are like, well, the book says this and the book says that. Don't get me wrong. I would be upset if I was to have read a book and it's changed drastically. But a film is only so long. You can only do certain things. You have to adapt things for the TV screen. It's not going to be exactly the same. And you also have to adapt to the audience that will be watching at the time. Like when you think about the series of Lord of the Rings versus The Hobbit, there was probably a 10-year difference, like a decade's difference. So you had all the Lord of the Rings films within 1 or 2 decades, and then you have the Hobbit films in another decade. So all the people who watched the one before are now 10 years older when you're bringing out this new thing. So that's why you kind of have to adapt a little bit, but within reason. So guys, thank you so much for watching. We really would like to know what you think. So if you've seen this today, please leave a comment down below. Give us your thoughts. If you agree, if you disagree, we're happy to hear it. And yeah, just please help to support this channel and like our videos. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Hit that subscribe button and the like button, and we'll hope to see you in the next one.